Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council and our partners in craft. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. Welcome to part 2 of our Employer Spotlight series. Last week, we spoke with Chairmaker Pete Galbert about his industry and what he looks for in employees. And today we are with 3 directors or business owners who have hired graduates of our programs here at North Bennett Street School and likely have a lot to say on their industries and a lot to say on who they like to hire and why. And so we're going to get into that. So we're with Nicole Salemme, co-owner of Action Lock and Key. And we have Kim Driscoll of MH Driscoll Building and Remodeling in Salem. And we have Bexx Caswell-Olson from Northeast Document Conservation Center. So first, I just want to thank you all for spending this hour with us and welcome to North Bennett Street School.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to start, could you briefly give us a description of your business or your institution and what your role is there? And let's just start with Kim.
So my husband and I are owners of MH Driscoll Building and Remodeling. And as a part of that, we have the MHD Cabinet Shop. And my role specifically, I guess I like to think of myself as the ultimate project manager. I sort of oversee all of the projects from start to finish and work hand in hand with our customers, architects, designers, and then our shop to make sure that things go smoothly.
For both the cabinet shop and the remodeling, the building?
No, specifically the cabinet shop. My husband handles the construction end.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
And Bexx?
Hi, I'm Bexx Caswell-Olson, and I am the Director of Book Conservation at the Northeast Document Conservation Center, or NEDCC. We are a nonprofit organization that provides preservation and conservation digitization services to libraries, archives, museums, and private clients nationwide.
And tell us where the NEDCC is again.
So we are located up in Andover, Massachusetts.
Right. And also, I just want to add onto this, you are a graduate of our bookbinding program.
Correct. 2009.
Yes. Nice. And Nicole Salemme, tell us about your business.
Hi, my name is Nicole Salemme, and I am co-owner with my brother, Michael Samra, who is a 1987 alum of North Bennett Street School locksmithing program, and he is on the advisory board. We own and operate a commercial locksmith company in Burlington, Massachusetts, and we have been handling a lot of commercials, schools, and government buildings all around the state with integrators and other subcontractors that we've hired over the years.
Mm-hmm. And you're located in Burlington, and do you have offices elsewhere, or how far do you travel?
No, well, the theory is as far as the customer is willing to pay.
Yeah.
Right today, I think my brother is in Amherst, which is a good drive for him to go out and look at a couple of jobs. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. If this is definable for you, what for your interest in this conversation, depending on how many North Bennett Street grads you've hired, if it's 1 or 10 through the years, doesn't matter. What sort of common thread, if any, have you seen in North Bennett Street School graduates? Like what's a continuity there?
I'm happy to get us started with that question.
Sure.
So there are 6 people in the book lab that report to me. At this moment in time, all of them are North Bennett Street School graduates, and it's a huge range, starting with Kiyoshi, who graduated in 1989, to Jane, who graduated in 2021. And I would say the common thread throughout all of those people and all of the other North Bennett Street School people that we've seen come through the center. They have an amazing work ethic. They have fabulous hand skills, and they have a really, really strong background in bookbinding, book repair, book structure. They know what they're doing. And basically I know that I can, put them to work on day one, and they can do the work.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I would mirror those sentiments of the people who have come to us, and we've had 2 people come through the shop who are from the North Bennett School, and our training time is dramatically reduced for anybody who comes to us. And I think the familiarity with the industry and right off the bat, sort of the work ethic and the expectations that we will have are really solid. So that's a great sort of leaping off point for us.
And that probably saves you so much time and energy and probably money in training.
Absolutely. We know they already have a sense of what they're getting into. So it's not just hiring somebody cold who, doesn't come to us with any skills. They already have a big head start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for us as well, they are coming to us knowledgeable of the industry, which is really important, because I don't think within locksmithing, I don't think people realize what it actually entails until they start getting into it. So when the students come to us through North Bennett Street School, they have that fundamental knowledge that it's necessary in order for them to grow and to learn. And we've only hired from North Bennett Street School. We've made that decision years ago. It just wasn't worth the learning curve for us. It was better to have them somewhat knowledgeable of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. A specific question about, and if you have the answer, great. If you don't, you can say pass. How has having that direct line of locksmithing graduates or locksmithing students going into the workforce, has that enabled you to grow your business just by chance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's very important, because we can send somebody out on the road and be able to communicate with them in industry terms, so that they understand what they're looking at, and talk to them and teach them. Because once you're out once you're out on the road, it's different, because it's not a controlled environment, and it can be frightening at first.
Yeah.
To a lot of the new folk. So it's imperative for them to have the foundation, so that when they're on site alone, they can communicate to the senior team via phone or even FaceTime, so that they can be successful out in the field and learn.
Yep.
And I'll get to sort of things that you do teach them when they start to come to work for you in a second. But Bexx, I have one other question about your pulling from North Bennett grads. You went through the bookbinding program. How much of your hiring North Bennett grads has to do with that what they have learned, the curriculum, as opposed to when they come to you post school? Like, what are what they're offering you in an interview versus what you fundamentally know they've learned?
I think kind of having some idea of what they've learned in the program is really helpful, because I know what they know and maybe also what they don't know and where they might need some additional training or to improve. So that's definitely a really, really useful thing.
Mm-hmm. A question that I've vetted from our provost, so I am free to ask this one and be open. Are there any specific bad habits that you can think of that you've seen that may not apply to your business practices or your industry, that you've seen that you've had to sort of mitigate?
I wouldn't call it bad habits, but something that we've learned. And again, remember, we've only had 2 people so far come through. We're newer to working with the Bennett School, but there are so many facets to the world of woodworking. And I think that a lot of the people who come to us are artisans. The people who are already in our shop are highly skilled craftspeople. So there's still an element, even with the exposure through the Bennett School, to kind of figuring out how each person wants to mold their career. So interestingly, because I think we've had tremendous success with the folks that have come from the Bennett School, but one of them ended up moving out into the field with us, which again is great. He's a phenomenal contributor now, and he understands sort of both sides of our business. And another individual who came to us a little later in their career, a little bit older, really decided that they wanted to work more with sort of hand tools. We're a bit more of a production environment. So they ended up moving on, but we loved the experience of having them in the shop. And I think we still have a really good relationship with that person. So I think that I guess my only comment would be that it's hard for craftspeople to really envision until they're in the environment and working in it, what that means on a day-to-day basis. And there is a certain amount, I think that a school setting versus a work setting, there's a bit more of a production mind that we may have that can be different to people who are coming out of a school setting.
Absolutely. I hear expectations is what I hear out of that, and we will definitely dig into that.
Yeah, we usually tell our students, the people come from North Bennett Street School, you've got a great foundation, but it takes you somewhere between 6 to 12 months to get comfortable on the road, because the road is very different from being in shop. And I don't think a lot of the students realize that coming out. I think they say, oh, I can do it. I can do anything. But the road is very different.
Yeah.
How would you define that? Are you saying the interaction with customers, the face-to-face stuff, or literally being on the road driving around?
No, the face-to-face with clients, troubleshooting problems that they may not have come across in the classroom. So things of that nature, and just the environment, having to fix a door when you have people walking through it.
Yeah.
It's just very different. It's very different, and it can be nerve-wracking, and you have to get used to that. Working out in the cold or in the heat,
Right.
all elements. And I'm sure the woodworking environment is the same. They just need to get used to it.
Yep.
Bexx, anything to add to that?
Sure. I would say there's lots of ways to do the same thing, and they're all right most of the time, or a lot of them are right anyway. And I think that, you might learn how to do something one way in school, and we might do something similar, but a little bit different here. And so having to kind of be a little bit flexible and learn a different way to do something, or tweak your practice a little bit. But other than that, I think I'm really happy with North Bennett Street School graduates and the skills that they bring.
Something that came up in our first part of this series was this: we talked a lot about expectations, and that something that employer really thrived on pulling employees from North Bennett was their threshold to learn. They're like the method of learning. You're learning to learn is sort of how he put it here. And I think that idea lends itself to what you're saying, Bexx, is that if you're learning, you're not learning how to do something this one way, you're hopefully learning how to learn from the person that's going to hire you, and just keep on learning and absorbing information. I think of it in that way as well. What are some things, and this might be just the same question as referencing bad habits, but what are we missing? What's something, and I'll simplify this in a way of, if there's a 2-year cabinet furniture making program, for example, what's something else that you would like to see taught beyond that, or bookbinding or locksmithing? What's something that could be additive?
I think that the focus at the school is really the hands-on skills. There are so many facets to our business, everything from inventorying to, just the general quality process that we have, to layouts, for us as a cabinet maker. I don't think it's something that's taught at the Bennett Street, just that, how we lay things out in order to go into production. So there are lots of other things I suppose that could be addressed. But I think the most important thing and what we have seen from the graduates is that they have just that real dedication to quality and excitement about the field, because I'll take anybody who has those two traits. You know, the other things we can easily teach. So there are things that certainly could be added into a curriculum, but I just, want to say that we have been so happy with just the general excitement around the field that we've seen from the people who have come our way. And that's the most important thing to us.
Mm-hmm.
I have to agree. I mean, the skills of the primary thing. For us, it would be just communicating with clients, working with like a customer. How would you approach a customer? How do you problem solve what the customer is telling you, and maybe how to articulate what's going on in layman terms to a customer, because you have to go from technical locksmithing to explaining to a customer what's going on. And that takes a little bit of time. But again, I have to agree, it's something I can teach. I would rather them come with the technical knowledge that you guys are teaching, and the other stuff will come later.
Right, because that's part of your brand too. Your, Action Lock, you want to teach them your way of interacting with people, because that's part of your brand identity.
Correct.
That makes sense.
For me, I think it's the bench work and the bench skills that you get at North Bennett Street School are absolutely essential. But as both Kim and Nicole pointed out, there's school and there's the real world. And I think having some real world work experience as part of the program outside of school, it can be really useful. And so I know that like in the summers, there are opportunities for people to work or do internships. And those are really, really valuable for people once they graduate, kind of knowing what's out there, what the environment is like, and sort of what an employer expects of you if you're not going to be self-employed. If you're self-employed, you know what you expect of yourself. But if you're going to go work for somebody else, there may be some different expectations.
Mm-hmm. Bexx, to hone in on that sentiment, can you give an example of, even if it's from your firsthand experience, what is something that is different, that was like a slap of reality from your educational bench work here to real world bookbinding, conservation?
So I think definitely working in a conservation lab is a little different than working in a bindery, and maybe some hygiene and glassware separation and some health and safety things that maybe aren't going to be part of a standard bindery practice, although it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. Just some things like that I think are really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you this question later, but I do want to get to, in the context of that sort of question, the toughest thing you've learned in your career. So maybe stew on that for a minute while I ask you another question. When someone comes to work in your place of business or your institution, what is the first thing that you ask of them or demonstrate to them? And how long do you ask them to do that or demonstrate that to them? Like, what's the timeline between day one and when they're, out there doing it?
For me, it's ask a question, ask for help, ask for guidance. Don't sit there for an hour trying to figure out something when I can give you a little bit of advice and you can get it in a few minutes. Time in our field, we are time and material billing. And so the biggest pressure for a lot of these guys is time. So they have to know that they can't waste it. It's no longer really a learning environment when you're out on the field. It's you're the professional and you have to act like it. So for me, and I do this from day one to even whenever, until they stop working with us, always ask for help. When you don't know, ask for help. You're not alone.
Yeah, 100% with that. And I would say that when people come to us, they can move as quickly as they want, so to speak, in terms of taking on additional responsibility. But until you can sand something to perfection, we're not going to move you on to cutting or, using some of the large tools that we have, that sort of thing. There's a progression to it. And so the harder they work and the more serious they are, then there's no real limit to how quickly they can move to being sort of into a more complete and full building role. And also I would mirror that there's always something that can be done. I mean, in our shop environment, if you're not actively building and there's a moment where you're waiting for something to set up, you know, you can be organizing or cleaning or taking inventory. You know, there's always something. So I encourage people to never be idle. That doesn't mean they can't be talking and having fun. We're like a family here, but they need to be busy.
I would echo both of those things. And then I would also say the way that we work here is that I will come up with usually me, sometimes somebody else will come up with the treatment proposal, and the client signs that. It's a contract and you really have to do what it says in the contract. You can't kind of go your own way. So if you disagree or you want to do something different, you have to talk to somebody, but like basically following directions is really important.
Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say that I mean, what you've all answered to that question is that I didn't hear anything like you have to go and organize the screw bin before you can touch a circular saw. You know, I didn't hear any of that kind of thing. So is it safe to say that when you are hiring one of our graduates, it comes with that, you know, that understanding and expectation that their foundation is solid. So I can trust them right away to get on sanding this and they don't have to sort screws for the first month. Is that safe to say?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
No, but there is value in sorting screws.
There is. That was a bad
Absolutely.
example, but bad example. I actually enjoy sorting screws.
Or as a former colleague of mine would say, fasteners.
Right.
Fasteners, yes. That's what Barb
Mhm.
Baker would say.
Yes, that's
Dear
exactly
Barb
who I'm quoting.
Yeah. Hi, Barb Baker. Can we talk some, you know, expectations is a big thing through this employer spotlight series, because you all are the ones that know at this point. Can we talk about pay expectations within your industry or within your business specifically? Do you have any comment on that?
It's such a wide range, I think, and I certainly didn't pursue bookbinding as a career thinking that it was going to make me a millionaire. But
That's smart.
yeah. But I think it really can vary, and it's all over the place where salaries are, and that's really hard for people, especially.
Is that based on experience, tenure, or the specific direction you're going in, whether it be conservation or repair or self-employment?
All of those things.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I really admire people that are self-employed, because your income can be all over the place depending on how your business is doing. As someone who used to be self-employed, it can be really hard to have a steady income. And then whether or not you end up working for a small bindery, a big bindery, an academic library, the salaries there's just such a huge range that's out there.
Yeah, I would say we haven't had any challenges coming to what seems to be a comfortable agreement on starting salaries for the people that we've brought in. But we also encourage them to sort of give us a little time to assess where they are, and we've bumped people up within a couple months of starting with us if we feel that their skill sets are greater than where we're compensating them. So there is a little bit of a kind of a fitting period where we have to see how independently they can work, what is their level of quality and really what is their knowledge base. But pretty quickly we can figure that out and make any adjustments upward if we need to from the standpoint of what they're being paid.
Mm-hmm. And just to ask, I mean, you're obviously basing that off of industry standards based on cabinet shops, or
Yes, but cabinet shops and the world of construction in general, I would say that as a small company, we're really unique because we also offer medical benefits. We have a retirement program. We have, paid vacation and sick days and things like that, that a lot of small companies really just can't afford to offer. So that all becomes a part of the package. But I would say at that, we've still, been able to be competitive from an hourly rate. And then further down the track, even though we're a shop environment, like our 2 lead people are actually salaried. So they manage their own schedule. They come and go on their own time. And that's worked very well for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nicole, what were you going to say?
We usually, because a lot of our stuff is time and materials, our technicians have their own profitability. They're not compared to others in our office. They're just, we compare them to themselves, and we have a sit-down discussion. We say, okay, this is how well you're doing. This is what we see you can improve on. This is what we see, whatever. And that sort of generates what their revenue is. In doing a lot of research, I've found that in the Northeast, we have a higher salary than the rest of the country. So most of our locksmiths are in the 90th percentile of pay for locksmiths across the country. It's just geographical.
Mm-hmm,
It's the cost of living. You have to be able to survive in New England, and we have to make it a means so that our staff can survive.
Yep, so that you can keep them.
So we can keep them and they can live a happy life.
Yes, we
It's
appreciate
always a
that.
balance for an owner.
Yeah, we appreciate that because this area is insane to choose to stay to live here. It's a real commitment to, well, everybody has their own reason to commit to staying here, but yes, I appreciate that, Nicole. For each of you, what is the toughest thing you've had to learn in your career or your business, the business growth that you've watched? I think of you, Kim, you're the cabinet shop, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cabinet shop is a somewhat newer part of your business.
It is. We purchased it several years ago. It was an established shop, but we really needed to redirect. So in the cabinet business, there are a lot of people who do what are called semi-custom cabinets, and we're a fully custom shop. So what that means, to give you a comparison, is a semi-custom cabinet might be like 2 individual cabinet boxes screwed together to make a long stretch of cabinetry. When we're doing something, we're really doing it as one long furniture piece. But the importance there, it comes down to sort of quality and longevity of that particular piece. And we decided to target the higher end custom market, which ties back into what you were just talking about, in part because it enables us to compensate our employees better, and because we had the right skill level. So again, tying back to people coming in with high skills and then what we can teach them when they're here. So all of that, I think the biggest learning for me was just, number one, coming up to speed on the business, because while I had done a lot of administrative things on our general construction side, I had never been really in the thick of it, working in the shop and hand in hand with architects and that sort of thing. So even just the vocabulary was really, really new for me, but I found that everyone was incredibly supportive. And I always joked that I was probably going to be the weakest link. But that I hoped they all, kind of helped me along. But really, I think just coming up to speed and then redefining the direction that we wanted to take the business and really retargeting our audience so that it was appropriate to the skill level and what we were already doing here in the shop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, sort of learning over time that not every project that comes your way is going to be glamorous or fun or interesting or exactly what you want to do. That as a craftsperson, you're doing work for other people. You have a client and they have expectations for the work that you're providing. And so in book conservation, there can be a lot of mold and dead bugs and, terrible paper and, things that you don't want to work on, but that's what you have to work on. And that's what's paying the bills. And it gives, it pays the bills, and then you have time to do what you really want to do later.
Right.
I think I echo that. Your customer is your boss, ultimately, even though you're the owner. That's who your boss is.
So
And
what was
depending upon the project, you might have a long time working with that person. So you need to find a way to get, to make it all work out well.
That's true. So what's been the toughest thing you've had to learn in your career, Nicole?
Probably patience. I handle all aspects of the back end of the business, all the financial, all the administrative, watching over the staff, all the HR components. Some of the things that I get frustrated is like collections, things like that. Those are the things that I struggle with. So for me, that aspect of the business, I just, patience, because it comes around. It does. It just have to.
It'll lock into place. No pun
It does
intended.
eventually. Or you hire somebody so it's not so stressful.
Yeah.
Which is what I did.
Yeah, we had this conversation with our first employer spotlight, was the understanding of when you realize that, no, I am a tradesperson, I'm not a spreadsheets person. So that's when you hire someone to handle that part for you.
Correct.
But I'm glad you're speaking about the back end of this, because for any graduate who leaves here who is planning on going down a path of self-employment, that's the number, wouldn't you say that's the number one cause of a small business failure, is that the lack of understanding of the mechanics of the business?
Correct. Yep.
Absolutely.
Collection is the toughest thing to do, because you have to have somebody stay on top of it, make sure people are paying on time, because without that payment, you can't continue to grow the business. And a lot of tradespeople are great at their trade, but they're not very, let's say they're not skilled in the business aspect of it. And we've had students who have tried to go out on their own and realized how difficult it was and how much extra work it was to run their own business, and they have come back to us because they didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's scary.
And just the overhead of having to carry certain kinds of insurance and renting space or purchasing tools, or all of that goes into it. I think it sadly has to be equally as important as the craft, because you can't have one without the other.
Yep. Reading contracts is not fun.
Right. Yeah.
I have a question about going back to you, Kim. I know the two graduates that work for you, because I've been in your shop, and I know them, and I know Patrick, he's a neighbor. And I know that he left because he wanted to be doing, small hand tool furniture.
Yep.
And I also know your cabinetry. It's absolutely stunning. It's the first time I've ever seen thick doors with a beautiful bead. It was just, really, really high end. Yeah. And so thinking of, how beautiful that work is there room for someone coming from this program who might be more inclined to, or leaning towards, fine, creative, detailed work? Is there any room in your industry for that, or your space specifically?
I think that it comes down to a couple things. Number one, to your point of space, our shop, we're limited somewhat by the size of our shop. We have a really good sized shop, but even at that, we can only run, let's say, 1 or 2 kitchens through a month, and we can only have so many people working in there. So to expand into things like, individual furniture pieces, so something other than built-ins, we do lots and lots of, custom built-ins and individual vanities and things. But if we're talking about, hand turning things and, curved angles on chairs and things like that, that's like a whole nother set. That's another set of equipment, and would require sort of an additional space. And sadly, again, it goes back to the financial end of it, that in assessing our business, we don't feel that we could make a living, doing just that. The time that goes into it and the number of people who are willing to to come back and sort of pay for that would be a challenge. So for us personally, it's not an area that we can, you know, kind of grow into, or that we're looking to grow into. But
Mhm.
that said, as a fully custom shop, we literally do. I mean, we'll have on some of our tools, you know, new knives made so that we can cut a new profile on a door face, or, you know, and it's limitless what we can do from the standpoint of cabinetry, or, you know, custom fireplace surrounds, things like that. But I think we do draw the line on very individual pieces that require that much handwork, because we just can't staff it and keep those resources
Right.
going.
I mean, I asked the question from the side of being able to pitch that to graduates here, in the sense that, you know, again, like what you said, Bex, have this as your bread and butter, and then you have the time to make the beautiful things that you want to on the side. But I think that it could still, it could still be a draw that you are doing such fine work, and you do every once in a while. I mean, everything's custom. You do so often get the opportunity to do a one of a kind custom millwork on a kitchen.
Right.
And so there's a lot to think about that in sort of, you know, coaching graduates here, that you know, steep yourself in reality. This is what you can do, and to find that creative joy in that they might think that they're going to be missing out on by making fine
Right.
furniture. Yeah.
Yep. And I think it comes back to also sort of getting to the point of being able to enter in some other facets of the business. So I feel fortunate I get to work on a very creative end, because I'm working on the upfront, helping to design spaces, whether it be kitchens or bathrooms, mudrooms, pantries, I mean, all kinds of different things with our customer. And there's no saying that somebody from our shop can't move sort of into some of that design mode and things that would expand, you know, what they're doing. But I would also say that, you know, the other graduate who we have, who's now out in the field, and I know that he still does a lot of that sort of handwork, custom work in his own time, because it's a passion of his. So it doesn't negate him doing it, but it's probably not going to fit into the schemata of what we're doing in our shop.
Mm-hmm. It's also just a point that I hover over, because there are plenty of furniture makers who have graduated who, you know, have the dream and the hope to be able to just build exquisite high-end furniture for the rest of their lives. And it's oftentimes it's not steeped in the reality of where we are right now.
If they're looking to make a living doing it, probably not. But if they're looking to do it as like finding a peaceful place within themselves and really just pursuing something that's a passion, absolutely.
Yep, of course. Does any of that relate to you two in your industries as well, Nicole and Bexx?
Absolutely. I mean, in locksmithing, there's lots of different avenues. Years ago, I sat down with my brother and said, listen, we can't be everything as far as locksmithing, because there are safes, there are residential, there is automotive, and there is commercial. Just the four major ones. It's like we can't be perfect at everything. So where do we want to focus? And we decided that commercial locksmithing was where that had the most value to our customer base and what we were looking for. So we do have very little bit of safes and very little bit of automotive, and we do residential as fill in, but I would say like 97% of our work is commercial. And we had to make that distinction years ago so that we had a focus, mastering of one thing rather than trying to be a little bit of everything. I think that helped our business grow.
Can I ask if there was some defining moment in the industry that led you to that, such as like technology in residential lock systems, anything like that, or building boom, commercial spaces?
As a business owner, it was where we could make the most of a living out of. It was more financial, I think, than anything. Residential takes a lot of time and is very small return on your investment there. Automotive was late night calls and people locked out of their cars and things like that. And that was something we weren't interested in. And safe work is very detailed, and you really need to have all the right tools to go there. So we had all the stuff for commercial. That was where our company was going, because that was our clientele that we were building upon the most. So we just decided to focus on that.
Mhm.
And all of our business material, advertising and everything started to just streamline and focus on commercial clientele from there on in.
I mean, that's such an important note for everyone, is look at where your strengths are and go that direction. A reminder to our guests, if you have any questions for our panelists, now's the time, and I'll just read them out loud. And I want to ask a question that I didn't give to you all beforehand, but it just reminded me. Something in each of your fields, has there been a sort of game-changing, industry-changing moment in your time in your specific fields that have really, whether it's game-changing technology and conservation, or the lumber, like a lumber crisis, or, like you said, if there, Nicole, if there's, a building boom, has there been some switch in your time in your career that was just sort of game-changing for you that you can think of?
I'll start with electromechanical. Electronics and locksmithing is game-changing to the industry, and it's just going to get more and more.
You're saying from within the mechanism, or from the tools that you use?
In the mechanisms, in the inventions, in technology, touchless, the touchless world now that we're trying to live in because of COVID. COVID changed a lot of that. Locksmithing is pretty recession-proof, I found. Because even during COVID, we were incredibly busy converting a lot of the hardware to touchless.
Yep.
And without that knowledge of how electromechanical hardware worked, we wouldn't have been able to survive as well as we did.
So a question within that question, has that made it harder to financially sustain your business because you are having to have a whole new learning curve, or is it sort of evened out? Like for new hires, for example, or your own, yourselves.
Well, I was fortunate because my brother Michael, who is my partner, has his low voltage electrical license. So he's had it for years, and that is something that we really like to teach the staff that come on. And we want them to be part of it. We want them to grow. We've talked to them about it. We really feel that that's the future of locksmithing. Like, without your low voltage electrical, you may lose out on a lot of work in the future. So
interesting. That would be a great tandem, right?
We strive for our staff to the life learner. That's what I look for, the life learner, somebody who wants to continue to grow and learn. I mean, even to this day, my brother learns every day he's out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
What about Kim or Bexx?
Not necessarily from a technology standpoint, but just sort of what's the climate is I think really affecting book conservation at the moment. And
you mean the literal climate, like climate change, or the
climate of the profession, I suppose.
Okay, got it.
And so, some other the North Bennett Street School's bookbinding program is very unique. There really is not another similar program within North America where you're getting full-time bookbinding training. There used to be a certificate in conservation program that was offered through a library school that was specific to book conservation, and that program has closed. And so now there's really no clear avenue for training in the field of book conservation. What someone would need to do is go to a master's program in art conservation and then focus their internship in books and paper. And so I think in the past, there was reluctance to hire people who had gone to North Bennett Street School but didn't have another advanced degree. And I think at this point in time, because there are fewer educational opportunities, and there's also one in the UK that shuttered, people are a lot more receptive to hiring North Bennett Street School graduates in like academic libraries and museums, because they're realizing that really is the only place and also the best place that the people that come out of the program have amazing skills. And so I think that's something that I'm seeing really changing, like just a real shift in how people are hired and what sort of is expected, which I find really interesting. The other thing I would say is that like Nicole, we were really busy during COVID, and a big reason for that is we were hearing from a lot more private clients than we had in the past. People really took some time to assess what was important to them in their lives, and realizing that their family history and their, photo albums or grandma's cookbook were the things that were the most valued things to them moving forward, and wanting to make sure that those things were looked after. And that's continued on, that people have really kind of changed their mindset about what kind of stuff is in their house and what of that stuff is important to them. And so that's really interesting to see.
I can see that. We were all housebound. I mean, that's what you do, is reminisce through all of your stuff.
Yep. So I would say, to answer that question, what's really been changing, or what is a big change, definitely automation. There are shops that are CNC machining, big tools, but in order to make that investment, you really have to be looking at a volume business. So again, we've made the deliberate decision to not go that route. So we're somewhere in between the hand tools and, making of individual furniture pieces, and a really, true, like full automation, high volume kind of a business. And again, it goes back to just defining what our mission was, which is one of our first challenges, and wanting to be in the high end, kind of custom marketplace. So we feel comfortable there. But that means that we have to always stay on that. We have to be looking to be working with the right partners, the right clients and customers, in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the RTA industry is bananas. The flat pack, ready to assemble cabinet industry. As someone who has renovated a home recently, it was like, it's just, there's a sea of it out there. And so I can see how important that is to differentiate yourself, like way, way above or way to the side from that.
Right. Yep.
Thank you all for those insightful answers. I have one last question for you. What would be your advice for a new graduate of North Bennett Street School relating to your specific industry?
For me, that's easy. I would just say, come to our shop and spend time talking to us. We would be open to talking with absolutely anybody, organizing tours to come through, but we want people to understand what our shop is all about and what they would be doing if they came to work with us. And so that's what I would say, is take advantage of that. I think most people in the trades and in small businesses would welcome somebody having an interest and taking a look to determine whether or not there's a right fit there.
I also just will just echo on to that sentiment that it's worth it for any student to go into any cabinet shop just to see if that is, whether they're sussing out that if it's a fit to work there, but just to see the complexity of owning a business and how much goes into this. So thank you for that.
Don't stop learning. That just because you're finished with school doesn't mean that there's not more to learn. And
That's
whatever
good.
opportunities you have for that, whether it's, working in a shop with somebody or self-study, take it.
I like it.
Yeah, I think both of those are well said. Well said. Come and visit and be a life learner. Those are the key things.
Yep.
Awesome. Come and visit and be a life learner. Well, that's our program. And I thank you three for your time. Thank you for giving us your time this afternoon. And we'll see everyone at the next In the Making. And I will see you three soon at some point. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.